Hi, and welcome to the Deep Dive, where I, the creator of the Deep End, will go more in depth about each of my shows. However, this is the show about the PSAs, so I will go over the process of making them, recording them rather than performing, and re listening back to them. Then I will give my final thoughts. So, to first start off is making them. Now, the PSAs, unlike the main show, were kind of extra bits that kind of added to the class's like total amount of points. So obviously the biggest one being the show itself, then you have the PSAs, and then one more thing is the service hours. The service hours are these things we do to help with like the on-campus radio events that we're supposed to do just kind of to help out and whatnot. So the PSAs were kind of an alternative form of assignment. Next to that would have also been like the assignments where you like make your idea for the show, pitch it, and stuff like that. But the PSAs were normally you only had to do two, but as you may have already seen, there is five in total. That's because instead of having to do all five in total service hours, most of us in the class got to do more PSAs instead. So I had only done two service hours prior, and that's why I have a total of five. So it's the two required at the pretty much told about in the beginning of the semester, and then the other three, which make up for the three remaining service hours I would have had to have done. Now, when it came to actually making them, first off was I was an incredible procrastinator. For instance, like, I'm pretty sure the first PSA I did like the hour before it was due. But in reality, it really doesn't take long to make them. In my opinion, it did not take long to make them. It was just, okay, what topic am I going to do? Smoking. Okay, think of something that you could do that might catch people's attention. Then I did the whole demonic voice thingy. And then it was just, okay, how am I going to do demonic voice? Let me use this to do a voice effect. Okay. Then I'm going to type this script because it's required. Okay. Here are some like background music. Bam. PSA done. And one of the things that like I really noticed about like the creation of not just the PSAs and the deep end is that I have a lot of quick thinking. Like, I feel like for most people, they have to think a plan out every single detail. But for me, it only takes like a matter of a minute to have already completed the entire like what I'm going to do. And what really helped in making these is having a little bit of prior skill in editing. Like I mentioned in, I believe, the possibly asked questions, is that I originally had a YouTube channel, which I did very poor editing on, but it was still a start that eventually doing kind of like smaller personal whoosy whatsits and whatnot and other assignments later in life, I eventually gained the at least amateur editing skill to be able to actually craft the PSAs into what they are. Then I really had an appreciation for the copyright free music because as much as, you know, you want to play a catchy song that will get people's head nodding, especially with these being uploaded to YouTube, which I'm already worried that the main shows are going to get stricken down, it helps a lot more to keep them put up. And plus, you know, the laws of, you know, using it for an ad without the artist's permission, especially if you can't really explain that this is this person's song. Now, one kind of difficulty I had with doing it was actually finding a website to associate with the topic. So especially on the cheating one, it was really hard to find a like organization or something that actually specifically dealt with cheating, like, you know, breaking academic integrity. But after doing a bit of deep researching, aka Googling and Googling and Googling, I eventually came across the website that I used. Okay, so now when it came to recording the episodes, the first thing that I had issue with was now 2 and 2 through 5 had all been recorded in the actual studio. The first one was recorded at my home using this small microphone that I had that I originally used for YouTube content creation until I realized that it sounded kind of bad, especially without any major knowledge on how microphones actually work. So that's why it sounds like I am talking behind a wall or something like that. That's just the way the microphone worked, I guess. So you can see I did not repeat that same mistake when it came to the other ones. And then when it came to actually like recording the individual takes, I'm pretty sure on most of them I only did one take. Now, it's not like they were extremely hard and needed constant re-practice or anything like that, but it did have a lot of like, okay, I say what I say and oh, well, this sounded good. All right, then I'm done. And then it kind of came to like how I actually did the voices. Like I could have just done my normal voice and then a slightly different voice for like a different person, but I sometimes kind of went fully into it, like especially when I used the nurse's voice, which yes, I did myself. That was not someone else. I don't know how to explain it. I kind of like bring it up to DJ's voice and then I add a bit more softness to it, so it kind of sounds a bit more nurse-like. I don't know. When I thought about other nurses I've like talked to in the past, and usually they have a softer, calmer voice. I would even call that like my cashier voice, because typically when I'm like, "Hi, how you doing today? Is this all for you? Your total will be $5.99. Here's your receipt. Have a great day." You know, the kind of voice that soothes the customer's mind or whatever. Versus this voice now, which is just my, I don't even know what to call this voice, default. I don't know. The thing I've mainly noticed about my voice in doing the deep end and the PSAs and just talking in general is that it really likes to fluctuate. And a lot of it can be dependent on like if I start talking into my nose or if I start talking down into my throat or if I'm actively thinking about a voice. And then the last thing about recording it, which I guess should have went into the making section, is that just, at least to me, Audition is confusing, which I feel like anyone who's used any Adobe product would agree with. It kind of feels like they make some of the best programs or whatever you want to call them, but then they make it extremely hard to actually know how to do anything in it, which I'm sure it's easy once you learn it. But it's one of those things like a little while back, I kind of dabbled a bit into Blender, which is a 3D animation software. Pretty sure you've seen things done from like Coda animations or something like that. And that was something like I learned in high school. It was, to me, kind of easy to use, and it was one of those things that I really got into, and I was like, oh yeah, 3D, I'm totally going to make this the rest of my career. I didn't. So when I used Maya, because I had another class where we kind of explored different Adobe programs, and Maya was one of them, which is also a 3D animation software program, that one was kind of like the Hollywood version of Blender. Like, it pretty much does the same stuff, but is way fancier. And unfortunately, way fancier does not mean easier. It never does. So I looked at it and it was like sensory overload. And that's kind of how I felt about Audition. Like, I only learned how to do some of the things that like would have really helped in the PSAs when I was recording some of the extras episodes. But here I am now, learning all these when I'm probably not going to touch this again for at least the summer. Alright, so now when it came to re-listening back to all of them, the simplest thing I could say is that they're just decent. Like, this isn't like the main focus. Like, if for whatever reason people care more about the PSAs than they do the show, I'd feel like I failed in life. Not like I don't already, but anyway. But But it's one of those things, like, no one usually cares about the PSAs they listen to unless it has, like, a funny animation, or is that, like, one pill commercial where, what is it? The We're Not Candy thing. Um, but with me, it was just kind of like, these are part of the assignment. I'm going to do them, and now that I've done them, I'm going to go to bed. Because most of the time, I'd turn these in at like 11. Except for the last three. Those I turned in way earlier. I mean, I recorded them like the day or a few days prior, and then I edited them all together later. But speaking of all of them, I just kind of found that pretty much all of them are, I wouldn't say funny, but more goofy. Like, obviously, humor is subjective, as many things are, but to me, when it came to, like, especially re-listening back to my voice doing other voices, I was like, these are kind of goofy. I don't know how people are going to feel about these. I mean, it always does my heart joy when I'm, like, making people smile and laugh, as long as it's not like, look at that idiot. But, I don't know. It's one of those things that, like, I did for the sake of making it interesting for me, but it seemed to have worked out well. So I hope that if I'm ever used for, like, big corporate PSAs, that I'll at least create a funny enough idea to give me some good pocket cash, but let's be real, that's not going to happen. And then lastly, just, I felt semi-proud in them. Not really in the sense of, like, I didn't actually think these were good or bad. It was just like, I'm like, you know, I made this. I hear a lot of the PSAs, like the one, well, actually, you're not going to be able to hear it because I'm probably going to cut it out, but one of the PSAs that, like, other students have made, not in that class, but in previous years, it wasn't bad. It was just kind of like, this is very strange. But I feel like mine actually feel like PSAs, so that's why I'm kind of proud of them. Okay, now for my final thoughts. It is literally no more simpler than they needed to be done, and I did them. I could have done it way simpler, I could have done it way more complex, but ultimately, these were a part of the assignment. This wasn't, like, obviously, I'm not, like, going into this class with the intention of just making PSAs. I'd go insane, but this was one of those things where if, like, Jesus. This was one of those things, like, if you genuinely enjoyed the PSAs more than the show, then, congrats, I guess. But in, like, more seriousness, like, I'm not forcing people to like the show more than the PSAs, especially considering that the PSAs are supposed to be just a simple thing that I didn't really put much attention to, but if you are, like, for some reason hyperfixating on them, I mean, not like I'm going to make my life's work making PSAs, but I'm glad that you at least enjoyed something out of mine. And with that, this extremely long episode is done, which is kind of weird that it took way longer to do this than it did the regular episodes. So, with that being said, if you somehow had a question that I somehow didn't answer already, feel free to drop it down into the comments, and then I will try to answer it as quick as possible. And with that, you have yourself a great day.